Commander Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the screen in front of him. The research ship New Horizon had been traveling through space for 3 weeks, looking for old ruins on dead planets. Jake never thought he would find anything like this. The planet below them looked like a giant had taken a hammer to it. Huge craters covered the surface, each one big enough to hold an entire city. Strange metal pieces stuck out of the ground like broken teeth. Whatever happened here was not natural. "Sir, you need to see this," called Dr. Lisa Hammond from across the bridge. She was the team's expert on alien history and old civilizations. Her hands shook as she pointed at her computer screen. Jake walked over and looked at the data. Numbers and symbols filled the screen, but one thing was clear. The damage on this planet was old. Very old. Older than any war the galaxy had seen in living memory. "How old?" Jake asked. "At least 400 years, Lisa said. "Maybe more. But that's not the strange part. Look at these energy readings." She pulled up another screen. Red lines showed where massive explosions had happened. But these were not normal explosions. The energy patterns were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. "What kind of weapons could do this?" he asked. Lisa looked at him with wide eyes. "I don't know. But whoever used them could have cracked this planet in half if they wanted to." The communication system beeped. A message was coming in from Earth. Jake opened the channel and saw the face of Admiral Patricia Ross appear on the screen. "Commander Morrison," she said. "What's your status?" "We found something, Admiral. An old battlefield. The weapons used here were incredibly powerful." Admiral Ross frowned. "Send me all your data immediately. And Jake, keep this quiet for now." The transmission ended. Jake looked at Lisa, who was already working on her computer again. "There's more," she said. "I found fragments of old combat records buried in the planet's crust. They're in human language." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "That's impossible. Humans have been banned from war for 300 years. "I know what the records say," Lisa replied. "But these fragments are definitely human, and they talk about weapons that could destroy entire star systems." 3 days later, the New Horizon received visitors. 2 alien ships appeared without warning. One belonged to the Krex Empire, a race of tall, reptile-like beings who controlled much of the galaxy's military. The other ship was from the Voidborn Collective, mysterious creatures who lived in the empty spaces between stars. Ambassador Zeth Ka of the Krex came aboard the New Horizon. He was 8 feet tall with green scales and yellow eyes that never blinked. Behind him walked a Voidborn representative, a being of pure energy contained in a floating metal suit. "Commander Morrison," Zeth Ka said in his deep voice, "we understand you have made discoveries on this world." "Just old ruins," Jake replied carefully. "Nothing important?" The Voidborn spoke in a voice like whispers in the wind. "We know what lies beneath this planet's surface. Your species has forgotten, but ours remember." "Remember what?" Jake asked. Zeth Ka and the Voidborn looked at each other. After a long moment, Zeth Ka spoke again. 300 years ago, the Treaty of Centauri Prime was signed. Your species agreed to never participate in galactic warfare again. Do you know why?" Jake shook his head. Every human child learned about the treaty in school, but the reasons were always kept vague. They were told it was for the good of galactic peace. "Because," the Voidborn whispered, "your kind fought wars differently than the rest of us. Where we saw conflict, you saw problems to solve, and your solutions were too final." "What does that mean?" Jake demanded. "It means," Zeth Ka said, "that when humans went to war, entire civilizations stopped existing. Not just defeated, gone, as if they had never been." Dr. Lisa stepped forward. "The energy readings from this planet, they match theoretical calculations for planet-killing weapons." "Not planet-killing," the Voidborn corrected. "Planet-changing. Your ancestors didn't destroy this world. They rebuilt it after accidentally making it uninhabitable during a training exercise." Jake felt the room spin around him. A training exercise did this? Your military called it low-intensity combat preparation, Zethka said. What you considered practice, the rest of the galaxy considered apocalyptic warfare. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent message from the Galactic Council. On the main screen appeared the image of a burning space station. Strange insect-like ships swarmed around it like angry bees. The hive swarm has broken containment, the message said. They have destroyed 3 star systems in the past week. All military forces are requested to respond immediately. Zethka's scales turned pale. The swarm. We thought they were contained in their home sector. What's the hive swarm? Jake asked. A race of insects that consume everything, the Voidborn explained. They treat planets like food and starships like snacks. The Council has been keeping them locked in their own space for 50 years. Another message came in. This one showed a massive battle. Hundreds of Krex warships fired their weapons at a cloud of insect ships. But for every enemy they destroyed, 2 more appeared. The Krex fleet was losing badly. Our weapons are not effective, Zethka admitted. The swarm adapts too quickly. They learn from every attack and become stronger. What does this have to do with us? Jake asked. The Voidborn turned toward him. The Council is desperate. They are considering lifting the treaty of Centauri Prime. They want humans to fight? Lisa asked in shock. They want humanity to do what it does best, Zethka said grimly. End wars. Jake looked at the images of burning worlds on his screen. Then he looked at the data from the planet below, showing the results of human weapons from centuries ago. How long do we have? He asked. The swarm is moving toward human space, the Voidborn replied. Perhaps 2 months before they reach your colonies. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He opened a channel to Earth. Admiral Ross, this is Commander Morrison. We need to talk. All of us, right now. As the communication connected, Jake realized that the galaxy was about to remember why humans had been banned from war, and he wondered if that was going to be a good thing or a terrible thing for everyone involved. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like this before. Representatives from 100 different worlds sat in the Great Hall on Centauri Prime, all talking at once. Fear filled the air like smoke. Ambassador Helen Carter stood at the human delegation table, watching the chaos around her. She had been Earth's representative to the Council for 10 years, but she had never seen the alien leaders this frightened. On the giant screen at the front of the hall, terrible images played over and over. The hive swarm had destroyed another star system overnight. 3 billion people were dead. The insects had eaten everything, including the metal from the space stations. Order, order, shouted the council speaker, a tall blue alien with 4 arms. But nobody was listening. Everyone was screaming about the same thing. Their fleets were losing. Their weapons were useless. The swarm was coming for them all. Admiral Zethka of the Krex Empire stood up. His green scales were darker than usual, which meant he was angry or scared. Maybe both. The 4th fleet is gone, he announced. All 600 ships. The swarm destroyed them in less than 4 hours. Gasps filled the hall. The Krex 4th fleet was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. If the swarm could destroy it that easily, what chance did anyone else have? How is this possible? Asked a representative from the Crystal Worlds. Your ships are the strongest we have. Zethka's yellow eyes looked tired. The swarm doesn't fight like we do. They don't care about tactics or strategy. They just swarm our ships and tear them apart with their bare claws. Our weapons hurt them, but they heal too fast. And they learn from every battle. Helen listened carefully. She had read the reports from the recent battles. The swarm was like a disease that spread through space, consuming everything in its path. Traditional warfare was not working against them. A Voidborn representative floated forward in its metal suit. The situation is worse than you know, it whispered in its strange voice. The Swarm Queen has awakened. She has not moved from her homeworld in 50 years. Now she is traveling with the main fleet. What does that mean? Asked someone from the back of the hall. It means the swarm is not just raiding anymore, the Voidborn replied. They are preparing for total war. They want to consume the entire galaxy. The hall fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. If the Swarm Queen was moving, then this was not just a few raids. This was an invasion that would not stop until everything was destroyed. Helen's communication device buzzed quietly. A message from Earth. She read it quickly and felt her heart race. The message was from President Kevin Murphy himself. The council speaker called for order again. We must discuss our options. All military forces will combine into one fleet. We will make our stand at the barrier worlds. That won't work, said Admiral Zethka. We tried that already. The swarm just breaks through our lines and keeps going. We need something different. What do you suggest? Asked the speaker. Zethka looked around the hall. His eyes stopped on Helen. We need to lift the Treaty of Centauri Prime. The hall exploded with noise. Some representatives shouted in anger. Others looked terrified. A few just stared at Helen as if she had suddenly grown claws and fangs. That is impossible, shouted the representative from the peaceful worlds. Humans were banned from war for good reason. What reason? Helen asked calmly. She stood up and walked to the center of the hall. I have studied the treaty for years. The official records only say it was for galactic peace. But nobody explains. Why? An old Krex elder slowly stood up. He was ancient with silver scales and cloudy eyes. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. But everyone heard him. I was there, he said. I was young when the treaty was signed. I remember the human wars. Helen felt everyone's eyes on her. Tell us what you remember. The old Krex looked at her with something that might have been pity. Your people didn't fight wars like the rest of us. We fight for territory, for resources, for honor. You fought to solve problems. What's wrong with that? Helen asked. Nothing, the elder replied. But your solutions were permanent. When humans went to war, their enemies didn't just lose. They stopped existing. Not just their armies. Not just their governments, everything, their worlds, their history, their very memory was erased. Helen felt cold. That's not true. Humans believe in mercy and justice. Yes, the elder said sadly. That was the problem. You were so merciful that you tried to end wars as quickly as possible. And you were so just that you made sure your enemies could never hurt anyone again. Ever. The hall was completely quiet now. Helen looked around and saw fear in every face. Not fear of the swarm, fear of her, fear of what humans might do if they were allowed to fight again. The hive swarm is different, she said. They're not a civilization. They're a plague. They destroy everything they touch. And what will humans do to stop them? Asked the Voidborn. Helen opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. She realized she didn't know. Nobody on Earth talked about the old wars. The military records from before the treaty were classified. She had no idea what humans were really capable of. Her communication device buzzed again. Another message from Earth. This one was from General Patricia Ross, head of Earth's Defense Force. Helen read it quickly and felt her hands shake. The message was simple. Human colonies under attack. 30 million dead. Authorization requested for defensive measures. Helen looked up at the council. The swarm has reached human space. They're attacking our colonies. The hall erupted in panic again. If the swarm was attacking human worlds, then they were moving faster than anyone thought possible. How long before they reach the core worlds? Asked the speaker. Helen checked her data pad. Maybe 3 weeks, maybe less. Admiral Zethka stood up again. We don't have a choice anymore. The Galactic Council must vote to suspend the Treaty of Centauri Prime. We need humanity's help. And if we don't like what they do? Asked someone. The old Krex elder laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Then we'll be very sorry. But we'll be alive to be sorry. If the swarm wins, none of us will be anything at all. Helen looked around the hall one more time. She saw the fear in their faces, but she also saw something else. Hope. Desperate, terrified hope that maybe humans could save them all. I'll send a message to Earth, she said. But I want everyone here to understand something. If you lift the treaty, you're not just asking for our help. You're asking us to become what we used to be. What were you? Whispered the Voidborn. Helen thought about the old stories her grandfather had told her. Stories that never made sense before. Stories about human ships that could make stars go dark, and human weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. We were the species that other species had nightmares about, she said quietly. And if you lift that treaty, we will be again. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 47 species voted to lift the treaty. 32 voted against it. 21 abstained. But it was enough. For the first time in 300 years, humans were allowed to go to war. Captain Ryan Blake was eating breakfast when the message came through. He had been commanding the research vessel Deep Explorer for 5 years, mapping distant star systems and cataloging alien plants. It was quiet work, and he liked it that way. The message was short. Authorization code 77 Alpha. Return to Earth immediately. Bring your ship. Ryan stared at the screen. Code 77. Alpha was something he had learned about in military school but never expected to see. It meant total mobilization. It meant war. He called his crew to the bridge. There were 23 people on the Deep Explorer, all scientists and researchers. They looked confused when Ryan told them they were going home. Why the rush? Asked Dr. Amanda Foster, his science officer. We're in the middle of important research. Ryan couldn't tell them the truth yet. The authorization codes were still classified. New orders from Earth. That's all I can say. The trip back to Earth took 4 days. During that time, Ryan received more messages. Each one made him more nervous. The human fleet was being recalled from across the galaxy. Every ship, no matter how small or peaceful, was ordered to return home. When they reached Earth, Ryan couldn't believe what he saw. Oz, planet was surrounded by ships, thousands of them. But these weren't the research vessels and cargo haulers he remembered. These ships looked different, bigger, more dangerous. Ryan docked at Luna Station and was immediately met by Admiral Patricia Ross. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Ryan had never met her before, but every human in space knew who she was. Captain Blake, she said, your ship is needed. For what, Admiral? For what it was always meant to do, she replied. Follow me. They took a shuttle to the far side of Luna Station, to sections Ryan had never seen before. The corridors here were wider, and the walls were thicker. Military personnel walked with purpose through halls that smelled of metal and machine oil. Admiral Ross led him to a massive hangar bay. Inside, Ryan saw his ship, but it wasn't his ship anymore. The Deep Explorer had been transformed. Where there had been scientific equipment, now there were weapon systems. The hull was covered with armor plating. New engines glowed with blue fire. The ship was twice as long as it had been yesterday and looked like it could fight 100 enemy vessels at once. How? Ryan whispered. Your ship was always a warship, Admiral Ross explained. We just hid the weapons. Every human vessel built in the last 3 centuries has been dual purpose. Explorer by day, destroyer by night. Ryan walked around his transformed ship, touching the new armor with trembling hands. Why didn't anyone tell us? Because we hoped we would never need to tell you, the Admiral replied. The treaty was supposed to last forever. We were supposed to be peaceful explorers and traders, but we always knew this day might come. Other captains were gathering in the hangar. Ryan recognized some of them from the Officer Training Academy. Captain Maria Santos from the cargo hauler Peaceful Trader, Captain Tony Miller from the colony transport New Horizon, Captain Susan Wright from the mining vessel Rock Crusher. All of their ships had been changed too. How many ships do we have? Captain Santos asked. 12,000 combat vessels, Admiral Ross replied, plus support ships, supply vessels, and mobile bases. The largest fleet humanity has ever assembled. 12,000? Captain Wright looked shocked. But there are only a few hundred human ships in space. That you knew about, the Admiral corrected. We've been building and hiding ships for 3 centuries, just in case. Ryan felt dizzy. Where were they hidden? Everywhere. Inside asteroids, in the gas clouds of Jupiter, on the dark side of dead moons. Some were disguised as space stations. Others were buried underground on remote planets. Admiral Ross activated a wall screen. It showed the galaxy with red dots marking swarm positions and blue dots showing human forces. The red dots were spreading like a disease. The blue dots were moving to intercept them. The swarm has destroyed 18 star systems, she said. They're moving toward the core worlds. At their current speed, they'll reach Centauri Prime in 2 weeks. What are our orders? Captain Miller asked. Stop them, Admiral Ross said simply. Use any means necessary. Captain Santos raised her hand. Admiral, most of us have never fought a real battle. Our crews are scientists and engineers, not soldiers. Yuri? Crews are what they need to be, the Admiral replied. Every human who has worked in space for the last 50 years has had military training. They just didn't know it was military training. Ryan thought about his crew. Dr. Foster, who always seemed to know exactly how to fix any technical problem. Engineer Jack Stevens, who could rebuild an engine in his sleep. Navigator Lisa Hammond, who could plot courses through the most dangerous space storms. Had they all been trained as soldiers without knowing it? There's something else, Admiral. Ross continued. Something you need to understand before you go into battle. The weapons on your ships are not like the weapons other species use. What do you mean? Captain Wright asked. Other species build weapons to destroy enemy ships. We build weapons to end wars, quickly, permanently, completely. The Admiral pressed another button. The screen showed a test firing from 300 years ago. A single human ship fired